Everything about left-wing ideology is wrong. I consider any sort of leftism to have gone too far.
Mr. Reagan.
I've recently come to the conclusion that the left is prone to accepting imagined things about the world as true, right? I think that the right-wing person prides himself or herself on pragmatism. And being a pragmatist, being a practical person, one strives to perceive the world as it is, not how they want it to be. But the leftist brain, a very sort of like artsy brain, wants to believe that the world can be certain ways so that the things that they want to happen can happen. And that's a lovely way to think of the world. It's just incorrect. The two fundamental fantasies that all of leftist ideology is built upon: one, straight white men are evil, and two, all other ethnicities, all foreigners, essentially everyone who is not a straight white man, they're the good guys. They're all the angelic, historically oppressed people who we must prioritize with regard to every political issue. Straight white men bad, everybody else good. And this is why I now say, although it's extremely controversial, every idea they have on the left is corrupted by a foundation in fantasy. I can analogize it this way. Say a physicist wanted to figure out what the impact of a stapler falling from 1 kilometer in the air hitting the ground would be. Say he makes a calculation based on the velocity produced by gravity, 3.8 meters per second squared. Now, he would come up with a brilliant answer. It would seem very impressive that he knew how to do that and everything like that to the common man, but he would only be accurate if the stapler were falling on Mars. If the stapler were falling here on Earth, you would have to use 9.8 meters per second squared. And this is kind of how I see the left calculating ideas to improve the world. Yes, the intention is good. A lot of them might be brilliant people, but they're working with the wrong numbers. If you're working with the wrong numbers, you can never get the correct solution. And so this is the problem, right? If all of leftist ideology is based in fantasy, none of it can ever really work. I come at this from the perspective of a writer. I have an artist's brain, but I grew up in a pragmatic family. And what I recognized pretty young, about my high school age, was that people who think like me are usually wrong. And why did I think that? I thought that because I realized that a lot of the time I was thinking about the world in the way that I wanted to believe the world was, not in the way the world actually was. I realized I can't trust myself to create political policy. Right? I had to change my way of thinking. Politics and producing actual policy and ideas to help the world, that's a very difficult thing to do. And to just have this very simplistic view of, I'm good, these people are bad, which the left kind of does with like their victim classes and their oppressor classes. It's so much fun to think that way, but it's the wrong way of thinking about the world. And if these people are able to create public policy for the rest of us, it will naturally lead us to destruction. I know these guys keep talking about how once you get too far right, you get into like racism, white supremacy, Nazism, fascism, that kind of stuff. I don't really look at it like that. I consider the right to be a spectrum of reason. And then if you are a white nationalist or you're a fascist or something like that, you're going outside the realm of reason and you're in this sort of distorted version of reality. And I actually think that the left is the same thing. And I don't think that Hitler was right-wing, right? I don't think that he was intellectually right-wing. I don't think that his mind... I think Hitler was like a romantic. I think he was like a leftist romantic, right? He had these ideas. He had this idea of utopia, right? Same with Karl Marx, right? These guys, they have these ideas of these utopias, but I would say that the vision somebody has of utopia and trying to draw society into it is inevitably going to draw society into ruin. So I think that there is a spectrum of reason. So the white supremacists, the racists, they're looking at a distorted version of reality, right? And the leftist, even the moderate leftist, is also looking at a distorted version of reality. If you live in a fantasy world, you will design government policies that work within the parameters of that fantasy world. You're not going to be designing public policy designed to work within reality. Not working within the parameters of reality will eventually lead to catastrophe. Right? That's what happened in Nazi Germany. That's what happened with the USSR, right? That's what happened in China. That's what happened in North Korea. That's what happens in all these places that try to design these utopias, but they're not working in the parameters of reality. these white supremacists, these neo-Nazis, these kind of guys, they're not working within reality. The left is not working within reality. They're the same thing. They're different colors of the same monster. So in that way, I think the left is always wrong from beginning to end, from moderate leftists to radical leftists. I don't think that there is a molecule of leftism that is rational. I think that the problem is that we've always placed the left and the right on equal footing. We've always said that there is a right wing and there's a left wing. And maybe at certain times in history they were on equal footing. Maybe the left and the right were just different sides of the spectrum of the rational. But now I think the right is the only group of people in America that are on the spectrum of the rational, right? And that's probably why we have so many different people on the right now. We have gay atheists, we have libertarians, we have black people, Hispanics, women. So many different people from different kinds of groups that aren't traditionally considered conservative are joining the Conservative Party because of rationalism. And I don't know if it's that the right has always been sort of the rational side, or if it's sort of kind of adopted all the rational, reasonable ideas about the world, and the left has just slowly drifted away. I'm not really sure what's happened. But now the right is the spectrum of the rational. And I absolutely exclude all the racists from that. And obviously you exclude the left from that. And so what you're left with is just, the right. And the right is right. The right is rational. It's appropriately named. Now listen, you're always going to have people with left-wing proclivities, right? People who think in an artistic, creative way. People who are very empathetic. People who are incredibly compassionate and just want to help other people. If we can encourage the left to think about everything rationally, as it is, and we can work together to solve true injustices in the world, then we would actually have true progress, both social and political. But we've got to start from a practical foundation set firmly in reality.
You and I are told increasingly we have to choose between a left or right. Well, I'd like to suggest there is no such thing as a left or right. There's only an up or down. Man's old age dream, the ultimate in individual freedom consistent with law and order, or down to the ant heap of totalitarianism.